the efficacy and the safety information that came from our phase 2B exceeded our expectations. We're very, very excited about moving forward, meeting with the FDA with our phase 3 program, and getting agreement to move forward.
Welcome back, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another Virtual Investor What This Means segment. My name is Janine Thomas. I am CEO of JTCIR, and I will be the moderator. Today, we are featuring Veru Inc., and I'm very pleased to be joined by Veru's Chairman and CEO, Dr. Mitchell Steiner. Welcome back, Mitch.
I'm very happy to be here again. Thank you for inviting me.
Okay, so before we get started, I just want to remind our audience that Veru is publicly listed on NASDAQ and trades under the ticker VERU. And during today's discussion, the company will be making forward-looking statements, and I encourage everyone to view the company's latest SEC filings on their website at verupharma.com for the latest filings and information. So, Mitch, exciting news today. Can you give me an overview of the phase 2B dose findings trial you purposefully ran in older patients who have obesity and the safety results you just reported?
Yes, I'm very, very excited about the results. We had shown data before with the efficacy, but I think to be fair to the audience, we probably should start with why we did what we did. And the answer is that GLP-1s like Wegovy and Mounjaro, and you've heard of Zepbound, these kinds of drugs cause a tremendous amount of weight loss. And the weight loss that it causes is by telling the brain not to eat. When you tell the brain not to eat, your body goes into a low-calorie state. In that low-calorie state, you kind of lose fat, which is what you want to lose, but you also lose lean muscle almost equally. So, for example, with Wegovy, at the end of 1 year, you lose 60% fat, but also about 40% of that's lean mass. So that's a problem. Kind of another way to look at it from a half and half standpoint is that if you lost 20 pounds, 10 pounds is fat, 10 pounds is lean mass. So I'm driving the point home to drive the point home that that's fine for the kind of the average patient, but at some point there's a problem. It's particularly a problem with older patients. And the reason it's a problem with older patients because they start out with much less muscle. And you've seen it. You've seen older patients, they start to lose muscle with age, and they may be obese. If they have obesity and they have that small amount of muscle, then losing that level of lean mass can be a problem. So we decided that we're going to run our study with our drug called Enobosarm. Enobosarm is a drug. Think of it as a testosterone mimic. It's not testosterone, but it uses the same receptors as a testosterone. And so you get the benefits of building muscle, burning fat. So it's definitely a fat burner. But because it's changed and it's not testosterone, you don't see the side effects of testosterone. Like, for example, in women, masculinization, and in men, effects on the prostate gland and that kind of stuff. And so we've had a big database of about 2,000 patients in 27 clinical trials. But the idea was, my gosh, if you can add to a GLP-1 like Wegovy, a drug like Enobosarm, and you can tell the body while it's losing weight, actively losing weight, that you could stop the muscle loss and just burn fat, that would be pretty cool, especially if you can get to the same weight loss. And so another way of saying that is what you want to lose is fat. Fat's the enemy, not lean mass. You don't look at somebody a bodybuilder and say, that bodybuilder's obese. You don't do that. The muscle is good, right? Fat's bad. So in comes our study. 168 patients were randomized, and patients were treated with Enobosarm and treated with Enobosarm plus Wegovy or Wegovy by itself. Remember, the idea is if you add Enobosarm, you can create these benefits. It's exactly what happened. And so what we reported was if you look at lean mass, that the lean mass was preserved. You actually lost no lean mass. And if you ask the question, what happened to fat, you burned more fat. In fact, you burned 46% more fat. How about weight loss? Because the only way you can get to the same weight loss, which is what we saw, is that weight loss has to happen because you're holding on to lean. And if you burn fat, you have to burn more fat to get to the same weight loss. And that's exactly what happened. And another way of saying it is when you ask the question, what's in the weight loss that was lost? I know it sounds funny, but what's in the weight loss that was lost? Well, with Wegovy by itself, it's about 6% fat, 40% lean. In our study, the Wegovy was 68% fat and 32% lean, so it's close. But with the Enobosarm added, that became 99% fat and 1% lean. So you're losing fat burner. That was exciting. The other thing we showed, particularly in older patients, is they had a problem, meaning that when they took Wegovy for 16 weeks, they had about 42.6% of the patients had accelerated function loss. Another way of saying is they had a greater than 10% decline in their stair climb ability. And that's a problem. And that's the first time that we've seen that older patients can get into trouble. And the reason that's important is because stair climb decline plays a role in understanding and predicts whether patients will get problems with walking, problems they get to fall, they get break their hip, that kind of stuff. So there is a consequence to physical function decline. So that was wonderful, but that was a full stop because we had to wait for the safety data. And so the safety data that we announced this morning was exciting for the following reasons. One, first of all, overall, the safety was very, very positive. We were able to show that Enobosarm added to semaglutide compared to semaglutide was favorable, particularly with things like you would worry about GI toxicity or GI complaints, because you know GLP-1s have a high incidence of GI complaints. And we were able to show that we did not increase those GI complaints with adding enobosarm. In fact, for the 3 mg, which by the way is a dose we're going to go forward with, the 3 mg dose, we actually saw benefits in so fewer side effects related to gastrointestinal effects, particularly gastroesophageal reflux, GERD, as you call it, diarrhea, and nausea. So that's pretty cool. That means, again, I don't understand the mechanism, but that's an added benefit. In terms of safety of special interest, in men, we did not see effects on prostate. Women, we did not see masculinization. So that's very consistent with what we've seen before. Now, some people are asking about how about liver, because some people know that testosterone-like products may affect liver. We did not see that. We did not see a drug-induced liver injury by Hy's Law in any of our patients. In fact, for the 3 mg dose, there was only one patient had a mild increase in a liver enzyme called ALT. Only in that enzyme, it was mild and it came down while on drug. So that's very, very exciting from the standpoint of safety. So now we can actually balance the efficacy with the safety, seeing good efficacy, which is basically showing 99% loss of fat in the weight that you lose and holding on to lean and preserving function. And on top of that, the safety is very positive.
Mitch, all great data. Thank you for getting into that background. So I have to ask, how does this efficacy and safety profile differentiate Veru from other muscle prevention drugs being developed as a combination with GLP-1 drugs in this space?
As you know, it's a hot area because there's a big problem with all the GLP-1s. All the GLP-1s cause the non discriminative, or say it a different way, it almost doesn't matter which weight you lose, what type of tissue you lose, and so it's not selective at all. So you lose muscle and fat. They all kind of do that, and they all have basically the same degree of lean mass loss. And so it's no wonder there are other muscle preserving drugs trying to figure out if they can be used in combination. To be clear, we're the first company to show data in combination with the GLP-1. So the other ones have no data, but we do know a little bit about them in other settings. So for example, all of them are either IV or sub-Q. We're the only agent that's oral. And I believe that's very important. Furthermore, the one that has the best data is a drug called bimagrumab, which is from a company called Versanis that was bought by Lilly. And in their data in diabetic patients that are obese, they were able to show a diarrhea rate of about 20%. So remember, I told you can't add a drug to a GLP-1 that already has background GI symptoms and side effects and add to the side effects. In our case with the enobosarm, we saw, in fact, fewer side effects. So I think that tells you very clearly that we differentiate from the pack. But being oral, I think, no matter what happens, that's important.
So Mitch, this space is definitely hot. There's been a lot of great data, a lot of interest in the GLP-1s. So why do you think large pharma will be interested in Veru as a potential partner?
As I mentioned, all the GLP-1s cause a problem of muscle loss and fat loss indiscriminately when you want to burn just fat. So enobosarm is a fat burner. But I think where the world's going with GLP-1s is you've got about 120 companies trying to create a GLP-1 type drug, and they're going to have to figure out a way to differentiate themselves. At this point, just adding another GLP-1 to the armamentarium of GLP-1s that have already been approved, you've got to differentiate yourself. So I do think that pharmaceutical companies are going to be looking to us as a potential combination therapy to make their GLP-1 different. Now, with that said, we are oral, and the future of GLP-1 treatment will not be injections. People are doing injections now because they have to. But, Lilly recently reported on their oral GLP-1 and added $100 billion market cap in one day. People want an oral agent that acts like the injectables. Well, can you imagine now having an oral agent that's a GLP-1 and having an oral agent that, and by the way, the oral agent will cause the same problem with muscle loss. So now if you have an oral agent that's a GLP-1 and you have a drug like Enobosarm that's oral, then that really solves major problems for big pharmaceutical companies. For example, now the injectables their proteins, they're expensive to make, you have to keep them cold, and hard to keep up with the market. That's why they had shortages. But a small molecule oral, which is will allow and facilitate better uptake, better ability to meet the market demands.
So, Mitch, given these exciting results, what are the next steps for Enobosarm?
Well, the next steps are also exciting because they represent some catalysts that are coming up for our company. So remember when I met with you guys last time, which again I appreciate, we talked about the safety data that's coming. We've got the safety data. We said it would come this quarter. It did. Also this quarter, we expect to see the second part of the study, which we call the maintenance part. So the 168 patients that I just told you the results, they were rolled over into another study called the maintenance study where you stop the GLP-1. Reason you stop the GLP-1 is because the biggest fear patients have is that when they stop the GLP-1, for whatever reason, whether they got to the weight loss they wanted to get to, side effects of the drug, weakness because of muscle loss, cost, access, and they have a situation where they stop the drug, the fear is they get this rebound weight gain that's all fat. And that's very disheartening, particularly if you spent the time to get to the right weight loss. So we believe the reason for that is because you have muscle loss. And when you have muscle depletion, even though you stop the GLP-1, your muscles saying you got to eat and you overeat and you end up getting the fat back and the muscle and the weight back. What we're trying to show, this is the hypothesis, is that by leaving muscle alone, we should be able to be a fat blocker, meaning that we will be able to blunt the rebound fat gain and potentially rebound weight gain. The reason I say it that way is that if you have weight gain and it's muscle, nobody cares. But if you have weight gain and it's fat, that's bad. So we're going to have those data coming out also this quarter. The phase 3 program that we have developed is pretty exciting. I'm a big believer that if the phase 2b worked, make the phase 3 look similar to that so we can de-risk the program. So the phase 3 will now, as I mentioned earlier, we have 3 milligram dose. That's the one that had excellent efficacy and safety. And that will be versus a GLP-1 by itself. We can actually pick GLP-1 to be both Wegovy and Zepbound. So the two marketed drugs will be actually tested so that when we get the results, we'll be able to be used with either one. Instead of 16 weeks, it'll be 24 weeks. It's close enough. The endpoint will be physical function. That's what differentiates us compared to whether you have more weight loss or less weight loss. What's important in older patients, can you maintain function, stop the decline? So we'll be able to show that. The meeting with the FDA, we're going to, our expectations have a positive meeting with the FDA. We've had some previous interactions with the FDA at the pre-IND meeting, so we know we're in the range of what they're looking for, and we'll be happy to report those the agreement with FDA in the third quarter this year.
Mitch, very exciting time for Veru. So glad to have you back on our platform. And with that, this concludes our Virtual Investor What This Means segment featuring Veru. And I'd like to thank Dr. Steiner for joining us today. And I'd also like to thank our audience for your interest in this segment. And if you like what you saw today, I encourage you to visit verupharma.com for more information on the company and to follow their social channels to stay current on the latest information. And you can also visit virtualinvestorco.com for the latest events calendar and a replay of your segment. So I'd like to thank everyone again and wishing you a great rest of your day.